I was going probably 70, 75 in the slow lane. And out of nowhere, the first thing I remember is an explosion of white, which I realized later was the airbags. All right. Yeah.
What happened?
I was coming back from a family function in Southern California on the freeway. Out of nowhere, I was shoved across 2 lanes of traffic and into the median divide. The front right corner of my Prius was hit by the front left corner of somebody pulling onto the freeway. And really all I remember of those first few seconds is an explosion and white. There's no smell quite like airbags being deployed. The sound when 2 cars collide is explosive. I closed my eyes briefly, or might have even blacked out. I might have had a minor concussion. And it wasn't until the smoke from the airbags cleared a little bit that I realized I had careened 100 yards down the freeway and off into the median divide. As soon as I could, I remember putting the car into park, opening the door, and just stepping out and kind of falling to my knees in a suit in the dirt with my car crumpled and smoking in front of me. It took maybe 5 minutes to come to my feet and start walking around. I knew to capture what had happened on video. So I recorded a little bit of my car smoking. The other driver was sitting, his head in his hands, just kind of like rocking in a state of trauma. People don't know how to respond. So I started giving people direction. I asked one person to please take pictures and video of both cars as they were on the freeway. I asked somebody else to call the cops. I asked somebody else to check on the other driver. Pretty quickly, the cops came. The other truck needed to be shoved off to the side of the road so traffic could resume. And eventually tow trucks came to take the other car and my car away. One of the most important things to do in a physically traumatic situation is to check on yourself first. I did have a minor concussion. I did have airbag burn on both shoulders, and I did have a bloody nose from the airbags, but generally I walked away unscathed. There's this memory of like little flashes. So I remember this explosion of white. I remember going over a couple of those yellow posts that mark the side of a freeway. And then I remember plowing through dirt in the dirt median divider. Something I've gotten good at is not arguing with reality, is not trying to, in the moment of stress, deny that the stress is going on. There was never a moment of, this isn't happening. None of that regret came until later. The thing that's interesting to me about this car crash is, had I not had a previous car crash, I wouldn't have known to take pictures and video of both cars. But it was super helpful later on for the insurance that had happened. I think leadership just comes of practice. I am a much clearer person at delegating than I was a decade ago because I've practiced. I practice every day at work. I practice every day when we have meetings. I practice every day with my family. The biggest mistake that I made on scene of the car crash was calling my parents. I had one of the bystanders call them, and they couldn't find where I was, I think because they themselves were in a state of traumatic shock that their son had been in a car crash. I know from long experience that there are a handful of things that really help me handle pain and trauma and stress. Advil, Adrenal Health by Gaia Herb, food with spinach in it, arnica for bruises, and mint ice cream for comfort. So on the way home, I had my parents stop and went by a health food store and bought all 5 of those items, knowing that they would be really useful for me as I went into the rest of my evening, and they would help me recover in my first sleep overnight. In the first few weeks, I was driving a tiny little rental car, and going on the freeway, I was constantly afraid that this car going by me was just gonna randomly swerve into me. I don't have that anymore. And I think that's actually why I'm making this video, is the speed with which I was able to get through that stress is something I have learned over time as a skill. There's a phrase called hormetic stress, which is, you could think of it as healthy stress. Stress that helps one grow from the experience and does not create a problem. The biggest thing that I did to overcome the post-traumatic stress of the car crash was spend time with my best friend Michelle in Puerto Rico, looking at physically the stress and the challenge of the car crash while Michelle was working on me, letting go of that tension and of that fear. Immediately after the car crash, I doubled down on a lot of tools that I have been cultivating in my life for more than a decade. Journaling every day, saunaing regularly, my use of the cold plunge, my new shaky machine, eating really well. I ended up sleeping 10 to 12 hours every single night, resuming exercise but doing so really gently and asking friends and family for help. Pre-car crash, I was in the best physical shape of my life. And after that incident, I was down to my lowest weight in 5 or 7 years. Years ago, I had a car crash separate from this one. And the doctor that I saw the next day said, today's gonna suck, tomorrow's gonna be worse, and the day after, 2 days after the car crash, is gonna be worst of all. And then you're gonna start to recover. It's only in the 48 hours or so afterwards that we can start to see what our course towards recovery might look like. I'm now 5 months on, and I'm just now starting to do push-ups again, and to do handstands again, and to start to gain back the muscle mass that I lost post-car crash. One fear that I've continued to take with me post-car crash is Riley in the car. If I hadn't been wearing my seatbelt, or if my dog Riley had been in the back, she would be dead now. And that continues to haunt me. I had just spent time with my family, and I was feeling loving towards them, but I might not have been. I went from happy and content driving along the freeway to slam, and that could have been the end. It was a reminder for me that we never know how much time we have left.